and then we'll show you a quick demo of the different integration points. Right, we'll talk about both Project Server and TFS, and then we'll talk about how those two environments are integrated together and how they sync up. And then we'll talk about some of the benefits of having these two technologies in the same environment. And then lastly, we'll have a quick Q&A, and we'll talk about some next steps. Now, as we're going through this session, just so you know, is being recorded, so you can get access to it or pass the link along to some of your coworkers or colleagues. And if you have any questions, they're in the GoToWebinar module. There is a question area. Feel free to drop your questions in there, and we'll answer those probably towards the end of the presentation, end of the webinar. If there's something specifically to what we're talking about, we'll probably jump into it and address it at that time. So I'm going to talk through the common issues and the project server piece, and then I'm going to pass it over to Aline and allow him to talk through the TFS. That's his area of expertise. My area is project server, and then we'll go back and forth during the demo. Okay, so let's first talk about a typical problem statement. What are you guys faced with today? What are most organizations seeing and issues that they're running into? Well, what you're typically seeing is disparate and insufficient and quite often out-of-date information, right, that leads to delayed deliverables and budget overruns. And quite often these are poorly communicated bits of information, right? So you're trying to get your team members that are working in Visual Studio doing development, for example, and they're trying to communicate work that they've performed, issues that they might have, and reporting that back up to the project managers so that they can keep their projects up to date and communicate new and real-time information back to the team, right? Often that information that's being passed isn't enough for project managers to quite often make the right decisions at the right time. Okay, well, what that typically leads to is unhappy customers, because what does that mean? You have budget overruns, you blow past your deliverables, so now you're trying to think of ways, and different, language you can use around your customers to basically explain why you're late, what happened, right? How did this occur in the project? Okay. So that's one of the many things that we're trying to solve with these different technology sets, is being able to solve this typical problem that you're probably faced with today. Well, what are some common issues and consequences based on that? Well, here are just a few. So from an issue perspective, and we mentioned insufficiency around the information, insufficient, invalid information, obviously the consequence of that is going to be poor planning, right? And poor visibility into that information, right? Milestones that we set out at the beginning of our projects are quite often missed, right? Because there's not enough information, right? There's more work that needs to be done around a particular deliverable, for example. And so when we have it out there in our plan and we're communicating it to the stakeholders, we miss it, okay? Disparate sources of information, right? Difficult to capture project-related metrics, right? So that's going to be the consequence of not being able to gather up all the appropriate information at the right time, okay? And then, of course, managing customer expectations. So the customer is seeing one thing, but you're setting out to deliver something different, right? So quite often the consequence of that is the requirements are not properly gathered at the front end, right? Poor milestone tracking, because you're just not keeping the project up to date, because you're not getting that communication across from the team. And then, of course, the quality is going to go down because of that. And then just the communication in general. How are you communicating today, right? Are you communicating in meetings, via email, some other source? Well, it would be good, it would be efficient if we could track all that communication in one centralized location, right, and have it consistent and standardized, right? So that leads to obviously difficulty in change, right? Change management, change control, right? And then, of course, from the funding side is that when an organization sponsors something, they want to know what those costs are. You don't want to have to keep coming back to them and saying, well, based on the fact that we didn't gather enough information early on, we're now needing more funding in order to make something happen. Okay, so those are just obviously things that we're going to want to avoid. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Project Server. What is Project Server doing for us, right? Why is that an important part of these various components that we're putting together? Okay. Well, the first thing, those of you who are not familiar with Project Server, and some of you may be running Project Server and not running TFS, some of you may be running TFS and not Project Server, and some of you may be running both. Those of you who aren't familiar with Project Server, it is a project management tool, which makes sense, that is allowing you to centralize all of your projects, centralize all of your work, centralize all of your resources, so that instead of working in a standalone environment, you're able to centralize all the activities for project managers into one location. It gives visibility into projects, visibility into resources, and with Project Server 2010, it gives you a complete, right, from beginning to end project lifecycle utility, right? In Project 2007, it didn't do such a good job of that. It did a really good job of planning and management, but it didn't do such a good job of creation and selection, and we're seeing that now with 2010. And because it integrates so well with TFS, there's even obviously benefits to that portion of it. Okay. So it is providing project managers a single location by which they can create projects. It's providing a location by which upper management, portfolio managers, and executives can then analyze those project requests that are coming through and then make decisions based on business drivers, strategic objectives as to which projects should move forward. Then at that point, project managers are able to take those projects and then run with them. They have visibility into resources and where they're available, what skill sets they have, what departments they happen to belong to, and then build them accordingly. What other projects are in the queue as well. Okay. So this is an important slide, especially for Project Server 2010, in that it is answering all of the different areas around governance in terms of what happens with the project from the beginning to the end, right? From a creation, selection, planning, and management perspective. So from the two sides of this equation, we have portfolio management, right, which is allowing for an organization to make the right decisions about which project should move forward, right, and project management, the actual execution of the project, getting tasks into the hands of the appropriate resources in order for you to be successful in the execution of your projects, right? So those are the two pieces that 2010 is really answering. From a portfolio management perspective, we get demand management and business case development and definition. We now have a place by which users can go into and say, here's a particular proposal that I want to put forward to see if it can get approved. And then it moves through the life cycle, right? Then from a project management perspective, once that proposal is moving through the different life cycles and is eventually being approved, then it moves into the project management piece in which we're able to resource it and then build proper schedules from that proposal, right? After it's been scoped and requirements have been gathered, now we've got our schedule, right? Along with that is we get the collaboration, we get issue and risk management that comes from that, and then we obviously get the reporting, the ability to capture the time, both project and non-project time, in one centralized location, okay? And as mentioned, from a portfolio perspective, we're able to optimize a portfolio, push projects in, pull projects out, determine prioritization against projects, and these are all things that we're able to get from a centralized location, right? Because business drivers have been established, so we know which projects, based on the criteria by which they've been filled out, are higher priority, right, and are in alignment with what the organization is trying to do. Okay. So in essence, that's what we're looking at on the project server side, and it answers from an integration point part of the puzzle. At this point, I'll pass it over to Aline, allow him to control the presentation, do a quick introduction on his background and specialization, and he can lead you through a couple of the TFS slides. So Aline, I'm going to give you control here. And
Thank you, Leon.
Take over.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alin Dumitrescu, and I'm a senior TFS consultant working with Leon for quite a while. I've been in the application life management space for quite a while, almost 10 years, working my way through development management, architecture, and right now it's consulting. Today, we're going to touch base a little bit on Team Foundation Server, starting with a high-level overview and drilling a little bit into some of the modules of the product, and then we're going to do a little bit of a demonstration of those features. Now, Leon, did you give me?
Yeah, you should be able to drive it.
Okay. Okay, so Team Foundation Server, what is it? At a high level, Team Foundation Server is a Microsoft product that targets the application life management market, commonly referred as ALM. This offering includes source control management, bugs and task management, reporting, and last but not least, project tracking. The main purpose of Team Foundation Server is to facilitate collaborative software development lifecycle. In the last 5 years, Team Foundation Server has become a serious player as a development platform. If Microsoft knows one thing well, that's to coordinate large teams working on the same product. Just for the sake of the example, I believe there are more than 2,500 engineers working on Windows 7 product. Well, organizing a team like Windows 7 with 2,500 people to work together is no easy task. Microsoft needs a solid product to support their infrastructure. So there is no surprise they're able to make such big impact on the market in only 5 years with their Team Foundation offering. So what does it do? There are a whole lot of features in Team Foundation, and we're not going to cover them all today, but for the purposes of our presentation, let's discuss this from the perspective of project managers and developers. For project managers, the key feature is the bug and task management, a module that allows them to keep track of everything that's going on with the project in an organized manner. While the work item module is good to track information at the lowest detail possible, when we need to see the information aggregated, reporting becomes a critical piece. Because all the people that work on the project, developers, testers, analysts, use Team Foundation Server on a daily basis to do their work, it is becoming very easy to create real-time reports and alerts on key project metrics. If we have time, we'll go a little bit later into some of the examples of these TFS reports that help us answer questions like how much work remains to be done, or are we on target for the next release? For development teams, Team Foundation is providing the infrastructure needed to create, package, and release the product. We are talking here about the source control management module to manage the source code and all the changes to it. The build automation feature that simplifies the process of creating the installation packages from the source code. The test automation, a feature that allows developers to make quick changes to the code without being afraid they will break out any of the hundreds of existing user scenarios. Team Foundation Server document management is built on a familiar SharePoint platform. It is widely popular and easy to use. And last but not least, TFS enables the team to create a consistent deployment process and deploy the product across all the machines used by the team, be those development, test, user acceptance test, or production. So far, we talked about Team Foundation as what it is and what does it do. As the saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words, so I thought to show here a visual representation of how Team Foundation Server is supporting the process of software development. What you see here is a visual representation of the application lifecycle. We start with the business analysts working with their user scenarios and the system requirements. Then it goes to the project manager to define and schedule all the individual task items that need to be worked on. From there, the development team picks it up and works together with the test team to make sure the product is built according to the specs. In the same time, operations teams provide the feedback from the user, suggestions and complaints to be taken into account for the next release. The great strength of Team Foundation is that allows the teams to define the entire process of how the people are working together and then enforce the process through predefined workflows. That brings structure and predictability in the organization. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to, actually, Leon, I think you wanna.
Yeah, I'll make you presenter, Aline, and that way we can bring out the, and I'll request control of it. We'll bring out the demo machine. So what we're going to do here is just some real quick examples. There's obviously a lot more that we can do within it that would take up more than the hour that we've allotted. But the primary thing that we want you guys to see is that literally right out of the box, when you integrate these two systems together, is that you have connectivity between the two. So we did, preset some of this stuff up. Those of you who have not seen Project Server and the new project client UI, this is what it looks like, right? So if I come up to the top area here, this is what you're going to see. This is the new ribbon area. I'm not going to go into great detail on that. We have some other upcoming webinars on Project and Project Server. But what I do want you to see is that when you have made the connection to TFS, what you essentially get is you get a new team tab. Okay, so all of these other tabs are going to be here as part of the Project Server offering. It looks a little bit different, right? But in essence, you're still doing a lot of the same things. So if I click back on task, you'll see that there's a number of new options and buttons from a ribbon perspective. Out in PWA, if I launch the PWA portion of it, I'm just going to come out to Project Web Access so we can have both of these environments open. You'll notice that in PWA, it's encompassing a lot of the same functionality here. You're noticing that there's a new ribbon area. They have moved a couple things around. If I click on this drop-down, it allows me to navigate around to the Project Web Access and then eventually to my tasks area. The thing that we wanted to illustrate to you here during this demo is the workflow between all of these different environments. Okay, I'm currently logged in as Kim Rawls in the PWA portion of it. In Project Professional 2010, I'm in here as a project manager. Right, so we have two projects that we're actually working with. One is built out where we've got the connectivity, and this one over here is yet to be saved and is yet to have the connection to the actual TFS environment. Right. So if we click on Team, for example, you'll then notice that I have the ability to come over here and choose a team project. And Aline, did you want to go ahead and take it from there and show the connectivity?
So the way it works is from the Team tab in Project, you can set up a connectivity with the Team Foundation server, and in this case, what we're going to do is connect this specific project with a Team Foundation project that we already have set up. And we will notice once the connectivity is done, all the other buttons are becoming available here. In addition of the Team Foundation integration being available, we also notice here that the view has changed. So in addition of the regular project columns, we see now the work item ID from TFS, and then a couple of other specific specific columns that will help us work, integrate well project and TFS. So now that we did this integration, Leon, do you want to show the saving and publishing of this project?
Yeah, so now that you guys see the connection between the two, so this was a new project that now has the connectivity. So what I would typically do at this point is, now that I've got a new project, I'm going to go back into task, and you can notice that when I come back into this, I still have exposure to those various columns. So in project and project server 2010, when I'm ready to then save it, I'm going to basically go up to file, and I'm then going to save it. And notice how this new backstage area is a little bit different. Now we do have a connection over to project server, so one of the things that you're noticing that's slightly different here with the project server environment is that you have a new departmental custom column is basically what's going on here, a custom field as part of the metadata that can be captured around projects, right? So we're just going to call this software development 2 for lack of a better name here. And then I would be able to choose the department, for example, and then I would go forth and determine what the values are. We're not going to go through that level of detail. Really, right now, we just want to save it so we can illustrate that. So then basically I would save it, and then I would proceed with publishing this particular project, so I'd be getting it out to project server. So if you noticed before, when we were in the tasks area for Kim Rawls, she was working in a very specific project and a task that she was assigned to. Okay. In order for that to happen, I needed to, as a project manager, publish this out to the project server environment, which is what I'll do here. So now I'm going to publish it and get it out there, and now I'm publishing out the project. Okay, so that's being sent on its way. So now if I want to bring Kim into this particular project, right, and we're just going to build her here, and then we'll jump into the other project and show you it with a little bit more built-out assignments. But I'm going to click on this first task. If I go into the resource area and I attempt to assign a resource, right, you'll notice that it's completely blank. Those of you who are working in Microsoft Project today in a standalone environment, what you're accustomed to doing is just simply typing in the names. Well, what we want to do is we want to have all of our resources from a centralized location. Okay, so I'm going to click on this Add Resources area, and I'm going to build the team. Now, one of the expectations at this point is that I've gone out as a project manager and I've looked at that resources availability. Now, that's out of scope for this particular webinar, but those are some of the things that the project server environment will provide me, is that visibility into where resources are working. So at this point, I'm going to build a team from the enterprise, and I'm going to go find that resource. In this case, it's Kim Rawls again, and I'll go ahead and add her to the team, and I'll click OK. Okay. Then at this point, when I'm ready to assign, I can then assign at this point, and now notice that Kim's available. And all of her information is coming along with her. Any rate information, any calendar exceptions will then come along with Kim as part of this whole process. And then I'll hit close there, and now Kim has a new assignment on this particular day, right? And then I would proceed with basically publishing this out again. Okay, so that gives you just a sense from a project server perspective of how this whole workflow is occurring. So I'll go ahead and cancel out of that. Now what we can do, Aline, is we can jump into our other project that's a little bit more well-formed, where we've got Kim Rawls and we've got some assignments, and you can see that she has been assigned here, and we can walk through the workflow of how she's going to see this in TFS as well as project.
Okay, so the way we're going to look at this, we want to illustrate the double integration between project and TFS. And what we see here is the view that the project manager has. They work in project, and they have a list of all the tasks that are assigned to resources. However, usually a developer works off from Visual Studio, and they have their list of tasks from TFS. Now, if we look closely here, we would notice that the same list of tasks that we see here, it's here in project. And what we want to illustrate right now is the double integration, which means, let's say Kim here, which is a developer, is working on a task that's assigned to her, and she is going to change it from 8 hours remaining to 8 hours completed, essentially finishing the task. So the moment she saves this, it becomes available in the Team Foundation server. And then what the project manager will do, will come here and on the team tab will hit refresh. You will notice here, before I refresh, I want to draw attention to this specific task. I believe it's the task number 6. Yes, the task number 6 that I just completed here in TFS scheme. In project, it still shows as incomplete. However, the moment I hit refresh, project is going to get that information down from TFS and upload the task as completed. Now, in the same manner, now let's say that the project manager decides that, okay, Kim just finished a task, it's time to assign a new task to her. So they can come here and pick a new task from the next phase and assign it to Kim. So they'll simply take one task from the project, fill up the required fields, and then simply push that information to project. This is the column, this is one of the key columns for the integration. This column tells TFS and project what task has to be pushed and what tasks are to be in project only and not connected to TFS. So in this case, the project manager assigned this new task to Kim, and furthermore, let's say that they just had a quick conversation with Kim, and they want to adjust some of the hours on the task number 7. And this is because, let's say, Kim initially thought it's only 8 hours, but in fact it turns down that it's 16 hours. So the project manager has the ability to make this change here, assign this new task in TFS, and then hit the publish button, which will effectively push these buttons in TFS. And we saw immediately a new task number 16 showed up here. And if we go back to TFS and refresh this list, we'd immediately see this task. And also we'll see that this one was updated. So that shows how the project managers and the developers work together, even if they all, even if each of them are primarily using a different system, but the systems are integrated together, and any changes that one does immediately will propagate to the other. So with that, I think I'm passing it back to Leon, so maybe he can show you how that will show in the project server.
Yeah, so that's a perfect example of that whole workflow. And those of you on the project server side are wondering, okay, well, how is Kim interacting with this, and how does it affect the project web access environment? Nothing really changes there. The project manager at this point can then proceed with doing publishing from here. So we have to distinguish between the publish that's going on with the TFS portion of it and the publish that's actually occurring here. So the publish that the project manager is doing here, which is what I just did, is publishing the updates over to project server and eventually to PWA. So Kim got a new assignment here, and there were some updates that were occurring as well as the capturing of actual work, right? So, and that's what's key, is so that you will have to make some distinctive changes into your process in terms of the way that they actually do the updates, but the changes that are occurring are also going to occur over here in Project Web Access. Okay, so Project Web Access is taking the updates that are occurring, but the actual work that's being captured from the team members is going to be from, as you're seeing here, from the Visual Studio and TFS portion of it. This is where they're making their updates. They're not making their updates over here in the Project Web Access environment, right? So that's what's going to be subtly different than the way you've worked with it potentially today in 2007, or when you don't have the integration, the various integration points. Okay. So I guess the other thing that we can show, Elaine, we have a little bit of time, is perhaps some of the other, features and functionality that we get with the different web interfaces that we get out of TFS, right?
Yes.
The team dashboard, I believe, and the.
Yeah, so I just got a question from the audience. The question was, is there anything special required for this integration? And the answer for the 2010 suite of tools is none. Out of the box, project integrates with TFS and project integrates with project server. So as long as all the products are configured correctly, you can set up this without any third-party tools. Of course, a little bit of expertise is required, but that's where we are here to help, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we may want to talk about the add-in that's out there out in Codeplex, right? So that's a utility that you use, but there's a very manual process to that when you're making the connection regarding the team project. Okay,
yes.
So right.
So the way this works in this model is project is a central tool that communicates both with project server and with the team foundation server. So all the integration or synchronization between those two happen through this project application. There is another method that used to be used in the past where a server-to-server integration was set up between the team foundation and project server. And then it had a special UI where all the changes are trickling through and get approved. But I think in this model, as long as a project manager is consistently managing the project, they can pass the information back and forth between between project server and team server just using the project application. So some of the other integration features here are, let's see.
Hey, Aline, there's also another question about do TFS and PS 2010 need to be on the same server?
And the answer is no. The best practices would be to keep TFS on its own server and project server on its own, and then they can just work together.
Right, and SharePoint server could also be on its own box. So you could have a three server scenario outside of SQL, of course.
Yes.
And these all be working together.
The best practices would be to keep that separate. Now, if there are budget constraints and whatnot, you may be able to put everything on one box, but that may not be the best solution.
Right. So another question, Elaine, do you want to do questions now, or did you want to?
Yeah.
Did you want to? Okay. Yeah, and then we can hopefully. So the other one is, what version of TFS is being used in this demo?
So this is the TFS 2010. So we have the TFS 2010 and the project server 2010.
Yeah, so everything's 10. And then how is the demo configured to synchronize? What steps were taken in order for the two to know about each other?
Okay, so maybe if we go back here, okay, so there are a few steps that we didn't show, but essentially, the main one of the steps, actually, I think, why don't we start? Do you want to start from the beginning, like with a new project, Leon?
Yeah, I think we have time to do that. Yeah.
Okay. We'll do this a little bit interactive.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is around, was during, and correct me if I'm wrong, during installation, were there certain settings that needed to be made?
I see.
Yeah, is that right? Is that where the question's going, in terms of the?
Yeah, if we are to answer that question, there is no special integration setup on any of the servers. All is done on the client. So if this would be the client, I have my project application, and I also have to install the Team Explorer, which is the connectivity tool in Team Foundation. So the person that is managing both will have to have both of these interfaces, the project and the Team Explorer. And once you have those on the client, you can simply go in project, and this window is actually a Team Explorer window. And this is where you would go, and we already have the server set up, but let's say if this would be the first time you do this, you would just simply add it, and type the URL of the new server, and then you would be able to connect to the TFS server, pick a project, and set up the integration.
Yeah, so right
here,
yeah, so I think that's answering that question then, because they're wondering. So Team Explorer is required, and you're making the connection there through that UI. That's where you're saying that's where the server lives, right?
Yes.
And you're typing in the URL of the server.
Yeah. So on the client, you need both project and on Team Explorer. Once you have those two, you can connect and talk with both servers and synchronize between them.
Yeah.
So if we go back to the project, another thing I wanted to show is, okay, I have this project, but maybe I wanna give some more information to Kim about it. So what I can do, I can open this in the web UI, and this will allow me to type more information straight into the TFS system. So you see, from a user perspective, it doesn't feel like I'm working with two systems. It's the user experience is pretty integrated, but you can definitely work with both. So I would make a note here. I will save it, and again, this is a project manager working with the tool that he's familiar with, project. But then, as Kim, I would come here, look at this task, and see the note that the project manager gave me. So I think that's very helpful. Everybody's working with their set of tools that they're familiar with, but they're working together. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, there's a couple more. I think some of them are being answered. So at the beginning was, yeah, there was that integration between '07, right? So we saw some of that with the, with the team sync in 7, but yeah, there was a lot of issues. So obviously they addressed that, right? So I think
Yeah.
you'll find that implementing this in 10 is going to be much easier out of the
Yeah.
box. So there
Yeah.
was,
So
yeah.
yeah, I see some questions here about what is actually sync. That's a very good question. By default, when you simply set up the integration, the required fields in TFS are brought up in this view. But you also have the option to add most of the TFS fields right from here. So as part of the integration, now project knows about all the TFS fields, and you would be able to bring this up here and work with them. I'm trying to find maybe a description. Yeah, I can find it right now, but essentially you have flexibility to set up all the columns that you desired to be integrated between project and TFS.
Yeah, and obviously if you make changes on the TFS side to the iterations or the areas, those are dynamic, right? So they'll
yes, and there are the major improvements in 2010 is that all this integration is seamless now. Before there were a few more manual steps required to set up all these things. So that's the big advantage. It's just easier now. Right now, we could say it's ready for prime time.
Yeah, now it is. Let me see. I guess is there a list? Is there a list of fields? I have not seen a documented list anywhere. I don't know, Aline. Have you seen? Is there a?
No, but what I think is happening in this list here, which is it's a huge list. Now you see both TFS fields and project fields.
Right.
So I'm kind of try to, oh, here it is, like these are TFS fields,
right.
Work item priority. So here you go. Let's see. Let's say this is, if it's not in this view, in this view, when you save it, TFS is just going to put the default value. However, if we need it, you can just update. You can just add the column to the view, and then you can work with it like any other view. And then simply you just publish it to TFS. And as you noticed, now it just works.
Right. So a couple.
The TFS fields. One of the questions is if the TFS fields are the same as 2007. The TFS fields are really depend on the type of project that you have in TFS. Between 2007 and 2010, those changes changed significantly. Now, we're not talking about some of the core fields, but you could say that TFS 2010 did significant changes in the field names and field structures. Yes, I'm referring to the Agile project. That is correct.
Right. So the project type will determine the fields.
Yes, and all that is fully customizable. If your company wants to tweak or change any of those fields, that can be done, and those can be integrated with project. Yeah, there are no special plugins required for the demo that we showed today. I don't know if there is any documentation. As you know, TFS was released probably a week ago or 2 weeks ago, We were working on this, we're on the front line of these integration projects, and we were working with the betas and, 2007 before, and we just want to, get ahead and give this information out to you.
Yeah. I guess some of the, can you associate SharePoint discussions with work items? I don't know, Lena, have you had experience with that? I haven't seen that. I'm sure that's doable. We might have to get behind the scenes, but it's not an out of the box.
What you can do, I want to make sure if I understand this question correctly, in TFS, you have now the ability to associate lots of things. So if that SharePoint discussion is a link, you can simply add a link in a SharePoint work item as where is it? Not here. Hyperlink here. So you can simply add a link in the work item straight to your SharePoint discussion.
Yeah,
another question just came by. Just to clarify, there were no add-ins in this demo. In 2007, there was a solution that required an add-in, but that is not required in the 2010 model.
Yeah, that was the description that we gave earlier.
Yes.
Right, around the separate interface.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so
well, I'm glad this is an interactive discussion.
Yeah, no, this is good. I actually haven't seen this many questions in a while. This is good. I just hope we're answering everything. I kind of want to go through this. So I think on the discussion linking portion of it, you're going to basically have to call that URL from within here, which just means that it's just going to be a pointer, as opposed to you having a window into the discussion.
Yeah. Okay. And now, in terms of licensing, a new question came up. Of course, you'll have to have the TFS license and the project license and the project server license. You don't need anything else, besides operating systems and all that. But there is no as far as I know, there is no specific license requirement to have this integrated. Leon, are you aware of anything?
No, I mean, yeah, I think as long as you've got licensing, I mean, obviously you have to have, because you're running Project Professional, and that's a client-based synchronization, so anybody project manager-wise needs to be running Project Professional 2010 on the client side. So yeah. Factor that in along with your user CELs to access PWA. That's correct. So question is user CELs to access PWA. That is correct. So any PWA users will have to have a CEL to hit Project Server. Can we integrate Project Server with SAP? Yeah, you can. Right, that's not out of the box. So can we do SAP type integration? Yes. A little out of scope for this particular discussion, but we can have a follow-up if we need to. Yeah, it's good interaction. Is there any more questions? We've got about 5 minutes left in the webinar. Is there anything else? We could probably answer a couple more questions and then finish off the deck. Okay. Well, we can do that anyway. I mean, we'll keep the question thing open, and if something comes up, we'll definitely do that. But we'll go ahead and wrap up by coming back to the deck. Okay, so some of the last things that we just wanted to touch upon as we close this out are just some of the benefits. I think everybody saw that. A lot of it looks like there's probably some add-ins or plugins, so that's a good sign. I think anytime that there's a feeling that there's some extra components in there to make that all work, and it works like that, that's a good sign that Microsoft is doing some work over there. So we are getting centralized and synchronized information. We saw that as the project manager was able to push directly to the to that team member, and updates were able to go back, and then we were able to publish it out to project server. So definitely from a performance and measurement perspective, as it relates to KPIs, we're going to get more accurate there, right? That's just going to be the obvious residual benefits of that. And also early visibility into red flag indicators, right? So very early on, we're going to start to see when things are dropping off because we have this synchronization, we have this communication. There's no dropping of work or assignments coming across. Okay. And then well-defined framework of communication, right? Everything built on SharePoint, right? Everything running off of 2010 now. So definitely we've got a framework by which we can move forward with, right? In terms of just sheer communication across all these different platforms, right? I think we've arrived. I think we're at a new place now regarding these different tools. And then obviously audit and compliance, right? So we're able to track, right, where all the work is who it's going to, how it's being reported against, how it's going up and down the different paths. Okay, so we answered quite a few questions. Looks like we have a couple more, and looks like Aline is in there answering them. So by all means, keep them moving forward. Let's see, a couple. I guess so. Just everybody can see these. Can we integrate Project Server 2003 with 2008? And okay, Aline, yeah, you're answering it to everybody. Not as smooth, more manual steps, and definitely configuration is required. A lot more configuration when we're talking about Project Server 2003 and TFS. Okay.
Yeah. And for the other question, what is there a particular sequence for the installation? Not necessarily. TFS can be installed as standalone, then a project server as standalone, and then obviously on the client, when you install project, you'll kind of need to have connection both to TFS and project server. And as far as VSNet 2008 with Team Explorer, if you have Visual Studio 2008 on your machine, you can still use Team Explorer 2008 to connect to a TFS, to a Team Foundation Server 2010. So this is not necessarily going to, I guess the answer is it's no here, because you can't integrate Visual Studio 2008 with Team Explorer 2010, but you can still do all we showed here with TFS 2008.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, that's a good distinction.
Yeah, the project client is the most important in this upgrade. So if you still have TFS 2008, that will still work. But as long as you have project 2010, that makes it much easier.
Okay, good stuff. Any more questions in the? Okay, great, wonderful. So just as this last slide here, if you guys are looking at moving forward with this, we can always do a one-on-one demo for you and your team to talk about your very specific needs as you move forward with this. So reach out to myself or Aline just through the website, and we can set that up. We've got a lot of new webinars coming out around TFS and Project Server 2010, so keep an eye out for that. And beyond that, we appreciate you guys stopping by for the afternoon or morning or late afternoon, depending upon your time zone. And we look forward to seeing you guys in the future. And any additional questions, just drop us an email, and we'll be happy to help you out.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Take care, guys. Have a wonderful weekend.
Bye-bye.